This is English shorthand dictation number 140 and the dictation speed is 160 words per minute. Ready? Start. Women make up half of the world's population and yet they are still largely excluded from politics and decision-making power. The world is not yet on track to achieve gender equality in politics by the end of this decade. The good news is that women are steadily taking up more space in governmental leadership around the world, with more and more of them securing seats in national parliaments and a good number of countries implementing parliamentary quotas to ensure fair representation of women. Although this representation has reached a significant milestone, the increase of women's representation is not yet happening fast enough. At the current rate, it will take another 50 years before we can achieve gender parity in parliaments around the world. The COVID-19 pandemic had detrimental effects on women's representations, with national parliamentary elections being postponed in close to 20 countries, gender socio-economic inequalities being exacerbated, and online violence against women being more widespread than ever. However, there were positive trends in 2020, such as remote technologies that can help in balancing the caring responsibilities with political career aspirations. Electoral gender quotas applied in many countries have had positive effects on gender parity. Parliaments with quotas have elected 12% more women to single and lower chambers. Progress is being made, but parliaments must be more open to women. Madam, this is not an occasion to trade allegations and I am not going to deal with this matter as the matter is before the court or before the various committees of Parliament and they will come with their own conclusions. However, I would like to say that corruption is a multifaceted problem. Therefore, we as a nation have to find practical and effective means to tackle it. And this is not merely the responsibility of the central government. The state governments are responsible for over 50% of the total national spending, and the conduct of the state governments, which is the most common way people come in contact with government, is essentially the responsibility of the states. There is anger in the country. There is anger about the misuse of public offices. Therefore, both at the center and the states, it is our obligation to clean up the system of governance and to ensure that we leave behind for our children and grandchildren a system of public administration which is capable of meeting the challenge of the 21st century. In my address to the nation from the ramparts of the Red Fort, I listed a number of areas where in the next couple of months I would like our government to take initiative, and I stand committed to whatever I promised from the ramparts of the Red Fort. Madam, corruption sources are numerous. Until the early 90s, the biggest single source of corruption was the industrial licensing system, the import controls, and the foreign exchange controls. The liberalization that we brought about has ended that part of this corruption story. Another major part of corruption was the rates of taxation, which were so exorbitant that people were tempted to enter into corrupt practices to reduce their tax liabilities. We have worked hard to simplify and streamline the taxation system, and now there is less scope for corruption as far as taxation matters are concerned. Even though I recognize that a residual element is still there and we have to work together through various mechanisms, including goods and services tax, which is now in public domain and which is an obligation which our country must fulfill if it wants to move forward. But there are many other areas where corruption still persists. We have to tackle this problem from various angles. There are central government programs administered by the state governments, but there are leakages. Therefore, we must find ways and means of reforming the system of public administration so that these leakages can be plugged. Malfunctioning of public distribution has been widely commented upon. We must therefore devise new methodologies to ensure that public distribution system becomes free of malpractices. This is an obligation which we can discharge only with full cooperation of the state governments. Madam, yet another source of corruption is government contracts. Wherever government contracts are given, they are given in a manner which creates suspicion that something is going wrong. Therefore, we need a public procurement act, as some other countries have. to streamline our contracting mechanism in a manner in which there will be less scope for corruption in future. In certain areas, greater competition itself will reduce the scope for corruption. But we still know that there are areas of infrastructure where competition can at best be only limited. There is scope for regulation. In the last couple of years, we have put in place regulatory mechanisms, but the functioning of these regulatory mechanisms, especially with regard to the management of the infrastructure, is something which requires attention. That is yet another area where we must find ways and means to streamline the regulatory system so that there is less scope for corruption. The House has my assurance that we will work in full public glare to fulfill what we have promised. I have set up a group to look at the scope for reducing the amount of discretion that ministers have at the center. This group has made some important suggestions. They will be considered by the cabinet, and we will put in place a mechanism to reduce the scope for misuse of discretionary power or to eliminate discretionary power wherever it can be done without detriment to public interest or achievement of public good. Madam, it is in the context of corruption that the last few weeks have seen momentous developments. Shri Anna Hazare has gone on fast. His plea is that we should adopt the Jan Lokpal bill that has been drafted by them. The background of this whole exercise is well known to this august House. We have sittings together with the 5 representatives of Shri Anna Hazare, including himself, who met with our 5 representatives, and a large measure of agreement was reached with regard to the shape of the Lokpal bill that we should have. On certain matters there was disagreement, and that disagreement could not be resolved, and therefore we have referred that matter for consideration of all parties, and the consensus was that the government should come with its own version of the bill, and various parties would then reflect on what to do with that bill. We discharged that obligation. We submitted that bill to Parliament. It has now been referred to the Standing Committee. Mr. Chairman, sir, I thank you very much for allowing me to take part in the discussion relating to the Customs Act. First of all, I welcome the initiative taken by the government to amend this act. It always comes to my mind that whenever we talk about customs, this arm of the government does not only generate revenues for the country, but also protects the security, integrity, and unity of the country. It keeps a watch on the nation's economy and protects the domestic interests. I must also thank the government for bringing out this amendment to recover taxes running into thousands of crores of rupees. By making this amendment to Customs Act, the specified customs officers would be recognized for assessment of import duty with retrospective effect. I am also sure that with this amendment, the customs tax evaders will not get benefited at the cost of exchequer on mere technical grounds. These tax evaders were taking shelter under the umbrella that the notices issued by the officers are not valid because the officers who issued such notices are not competent to take action against such customs tax evaders. So this amendment will definitely take care of the need of the hour to see that the customs tax evaders do not get the opportunity again on this flimsy ground. Every country in the world has got a strong customs department and stringent rules. We should also strengthen and tighten our customs department. It is not that we doubt our own officers in the customs department. We should make rules which will ensure that only the goods that deserve to be imported reach Indian ports and airports. India is a country which is facing dumping of all products from all over the world, whether it is required in our land or not. But the world is taking advantage of the softness of Indian rules given the way in which the customs tax evaders had been taking shelters on the mere technical fault in the existing Customs Act. Today, godowns of our customs department are flooded with unclaimed foreign goods. How have these goods found their way to India? This type of dumping should be stopped. One more important thing which I would like to mention here is that today Customs Department has become one of the main revenue generating departments of the government. This is because today the country's industrial progress has slowed down. We have been witnessing a decreasing trend in industrial production. Now the Indian customers are moving towards foreign goods and our people have become dependent on foreign goods. This is not a welcome step. We need to stop this and we should promote our own products. The Customs Department should be made more sophisticated and its personnel should have more training. The policy of transfer of customs officers should be followed meticulously to make the customs transactions more transparent.